Hello and welcome to this devlog. Today I will be talking about how I made my game Quodon Treachery on the Arhide in just 6 months and costing me just $20. Probably would have taken me a lot less time if I was doing this full time, but I have stuff like school and I'm only doing this as a hobby, so I can't devote all my time to it. I'll take you through everything I've done, from the art to the music to the actual scripting and some of the tools I've used to help me along the way. And without further ado, let's hop into the video. So for this game, I planned to make a visual novel that was sort of a murder mystery and had minigame elements to it. So I played Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog and was inspired to make a game like it. When first making a game, you have to figure out what type of game engine you want to use. I use Unity because I'm used to it, and it's also free. Some might remember them from a controversy a little while back, but if you're just getting started like I am, it doesn't really affect you. There are a lot of other free engines out there, for example Godot, and if you want specifically one for 2D games, you could use Game Maker Studio 2. And I found that Unity has a lot of useful features for me, and there's many tutorials for it, so if you're not sure how to implement something, there's always going to be a tutorial for it. When finding your own game engine, make sure to do a bunch of research on your own. You might find a game engine that works for you. So for the art style, I decided to make my game in the pixel art style because I enjoy games like that, and it's a little easier for me to understand how to make this art. Anyway, the editor that I used is Aseprite, which is the one and only cost for this game, costing $20 on Steam. And technically, I bought it for a previous project, so you could sort of say I spent like $0 on this game, and that's besides the point. Anyway, pixel art is easy to learn, but hard to master. What I mean by this is someone like me who has been doing pixel art for less than a year can make some pretty decent sprites, but it does take a lot of time to truly master and create some extraordinary works. Though I think I did a pretty decent job at some of the artwork, especially in the backgrounds. I'll show some of them on the screen now. Another thing I learned through pixel art was character design. I watched an amazing tutorial by Adam C. Eunice that I'll link in the description, and I was able to make my own characters based on his video. I have 8 characters with a variety of backstories, and they're all ranging from expressive to characters that don't show what they're feeling. I want to make sure I nail the emotions because that could help you out in figuring out the culprit. This brings me to what you actually do in the game and the story of it. This game takes place in the far future, and Captain John Will Smith and his crew are delivering cargo across the vast expanse of space. However, one of the crew members sabotages the ship, causing it to go off course directly into the sun. Captain Smith is able to save the ship, but now has to figure out who tried to sabotage the ship before they strike again. You have to interrogate different crew members, sort through their stories to find the culprit, and play different mini-games along the way. Different choices lead to 7 different endings, and once you got one, you could go back to get them all. If this sounds interesting to you, you could check the link in the description. The game dropped June 20th, 2025. It would mean a lot to me if you give it a try. If you don't want to spend the money on the game, you can wishlist it and support me that way. This game is just one part of the universe I'm building, and there's definitely a lot more to the story, and I'm even planning on creating a sequel game that continues from one of the endings. Now, continuing on how I made this game, since it's a visual novel, dialogue is very important. I used a tutorial by Shaped by Rain Studios that uses Inky to write dialogue. This made it really easy to implement stuff like emotion changes, different layouts, and different choices. It made it easily scalable with how much dialogue there is, and there is a ton of dialogue in this story. With that in mind, let me introduce you to the spine of the project, the Story Manager script. So to put all these things together in Unity, I had to create a Story Manager script, which is the spine of the project. There's basically a variable called story count, and every time dialogue is finished, 1 is added to the story count, and then the Story Manager checks if a certain story count is reached, and it will do something based on that. The system can be optimized a ton, and I probably did it in the least efficient way possible. If I'm working on a bigger project, I'll make sure to optimize it more for better performance. This also made the replayability aspect a lot easier to manage though, as well as the saving system. One of the problems I found with Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog is that it had the same minigame over and over and just harder throughout the levels. I wanted to make it a unique minigame so it's something new every time. From asteroids to cooking to surgery, there are plenty of minigames to play. There's even a boss fight. As well as making each minigame unique, it also needed to fit with the story, which I think I did pretty well. Another often overlooked part of making games but super important is sound design. Without sound design, the game feels empty and hollow. I got all my sound effects off of Storyblocks because it's actually pretty difficult to make your own sound effects, and my audio recording equipment sucks really bad. Stock sound effects are a lot easier to obtain as somebody as less knowledgeable as me, and they actually do sound pretty good. Another aspect of sound design is music. I decided to create my own music because paying somebody to do it didn't feel right when I was making everything else by myself. This was pretty challenging since I had no music knowledge, but a couple of tutorials on YouTube and some practice, you can make some pretty decent music. It's not going to blow anyone away, it's not going to win any awards, but if you put the time and effort, it will sound good. I used the free software BandLab. It's pretty simple to learn. They have a bunch of different instruments for unique sounds, and I was able to make music that I was proud of. As with any software, make sure to do your research before. There's definitely loads more resources out there, and I do not have enough knowledge to tell you which to use. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope I inspired some of you to make your own game, because at the end of the day, you can do it if you're willing to put in the effort. I was first inspired by watching someone compete in a game jam, and I thought to myself, that looks pretty cool, I wish I could do that. And I thought, oh wait, maybe I can. And here I am 3 years later, doing what I saw, and I love it. It'll take some time, practice, and patience, but eventually you too could create games like I do. If you want to check out my game, Quodon Treachery on the Rawhide, there's a link in the description, but otherwise, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.